we've been working on this taco truck app now. A couple days, we've added maps and a couple other things. And now it's time to get this thing into production. Right? We want to have it off of our laptops and on the internet so that our friends can use it and try it out. And it's going to be the kind of the same thing you're going to do for your capstones, right? You want them to be visible somewhere. For demo day, you might still just run it off of your local laptop, depending on how the internet's doing that day, right? Most students make sure that their deployed version is running and they have a version running with Rails server and Yarn start locally, that in case the internet is down, Heroku is down, something is wrong, they've got a backup. But it's great to start showing your friends your apps, right? Let them start looking at the list of places that are beers, let them start uploading photos and play around with it. So when we were doing our front-end apps, we were deploying to a service called Surge. The service we're going to deploy to for our backends is called Heroku. Heroku, Heroku. So Heroku is a platform as a service company. They offer hosting for your applications. They started out mostly just doing Rails applications, but now host all kinds of things. In fact, it's the same service that the .NET students are using to host their C# .NET apps. They have to jump through some more hoops than we do, because Heroku has made deploying Ruby applications, Rails applications, Python applications, etc. very simple. So you're going to sign up for a free account on Heroku. So go to heroku.com and sign up for your account. I'm just going to log into mine. What's interesting about Heroku is they actually don't run any of their own servers. Their servers sit on top of Amazon AWS. Right? So they don't even own servers. They delegate all of that to Amazon. So when you build your React application, your Heroku apps, you're going to get sort of this list of apps that you have running there. And you see I have a whole bunch. Some of them I have named and some of them I have randomly named. If you don't name your app on Heroku, it's going to generate one for you, like Pure Beyond 84514, or you can name your application. And then if you want a custom domain for your application, we can talk about how to do that separately. I'm not going to demo how to do that. But all of your applications are going to be something.herokuapp.com. For instance, let's do this one, all Ruby books React. So, for instance, this is an app we did back in IronYard, right? My Heroku app is called All Ruby Books React, but it's allrubybooksreact.herokuapp.com. For your capstone projects, it's no big deal if it's mywanderland.herokuapp.com. But if you actually own your domain, there is a way that you can get that domain registered. So did you see it kind of took a second for the app to come up, right? So kind of how Heroku ends up making money is for the free apps, they will spin up your application and run it. And if nobody is interacting with it for a while, they will shut it down. And then the next time somebody comes to your URL, it's going to take 10, 15, 30 seconds for your app to come up, and then it's up and running, and if no one uses it for a while, they shut it down. Right? Those are for the free tier. If you sign up and you pay them for the service, you get a certain number of apps that will stay running all the time, so every time somebody comes back, the app is waiting for them. So if you get your Heroku account created, the next thing we need to do is from the command line, brew install Heroku, what they call their tool belt. And this gives us commands we can use from the terminal to interact with Heroku, the service. I don't know under Linux what it is, but you could probably do an app search Heroku. And it's probably like Heroku-CLI or Heroku tool belt. I think they're calling it Heroku CLI now, so my assumption is it'll be Heroku-CLI. if it's anything under our Linux folks. I've already installed it, so I'm not going to install it. And this gives you a Heroku command that we're going to use to deploy our applications. So anybody have a challenge getting signed up for Heroku? Who does everybody have a Heroku app now? Yes? Or sorry, an account?
Are we doing that?
Well, you might want to just to verify that you can get signed up and connected. And I just want to make sure that your Rails applications for your capstones have an app. So let's just take the time now. Let's just take the time now to do it. That way everybody has it. If you're not ready to do this for your capstone app, you can pick any other Rails application you've done, like take the Stack Overflow example, any of those that you've done that are independent Git projects that are Rails applications. You can test run this on that if you're not ready to try it for your capstone project. But if you're ready to try it for your capstone project, that's fine. So get signed up with a Heroku account and brew install Heroku. Cool. So if you have a Heroku account and you've installed a Heroku command line, Chris, did you find it is at heroku-cli?
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't see one for the library, but you're glad to
Yeah, cool. So I'm in my Taco Tuesday GitHub project. I have everything committed. Don't type this just yet, because I'm going to show you some options. The command we're going to run eventually, don't run it yet, is Heroku space create. But you'll notice that if we ask for the help for Heroku create, if we do Heroku create-help, we can generate a name for our app. Right? So without something, you're going to get a random name like Floating Dragon 42. Right? If you want a more reasonable name, you can, from inside of your application folder, right, where your Git project is, Heroku create, and then give it a name. That name has to be unique across all of Heroku, right? So chances are, if your app is called like My Trips, somebody probably already has My Trips. Somebody probably already has a Taco Tuesday. So to like see if I can avoid a name collision, I'm just going to call mine SDG Taco Tuesday, right? If you try and create an app and it already exists, it'll tell you that name is not good. So try your own project's name at first, and if it doesn't work, think of a variation. Like yours is Hitch. I would try Hitch, Hitch-app, Hitch app, Hitch something, right? Try a couple variations if you want a better name than Floating Dragon 42. And when you do this, it'll say, hey, creating, in this case, SDG Taco Tuesday done. You may get asked at first to log into your Heroku account. Right? You're probably gonna get asked like, hey, I don't know who you are. Please give me your Heroku username and password. It just wants to log in as you want to get that authentication token. Oh, right? So that it can now go and create apps on your own. Right? And what it's showing me here are two things. In the green, it's showing me a Git repository, and in the blue, it's showing me where my app lives. Right? So the blue is where is my app for users. The green is where my Git repository is. Because the way we send our code to Heroku is via Git. So before you've seen we've done things like Git push, right? And that pushes our code to GitHub as a way for GitHub to have a copy of our code. Well, in fact, that's the same way that Heroku is going to receive our code so it can run our apps. So maybe you've seen me run this before on your machines, git remote-v. This shows all of the remote locations where we've been pushing our code. And if you run this in your repository now, you should probably see two, right? You'll see something that says origin and one that says Heroku. The origin one refers to GitHub, right? That's why we had to do that git push-u origin master, right? Origin is going to refer to GitHub. Heroku is going to be where we push our code to Heroku. So now, when you're developing and you're making commits, you have two places to push to. If you just do a git push, you're sending a copy of your code to GitHub for GitHub to keep a copy, right? And you can push as often as you want to GitHub. And when you're ready and you think, hey, this is code I want to be live on my website, you can do git push Heroku master. So what we're saying is, hey Git, I want you to push this code, not to GitHub this time, I want you to push this code to Heroku, and master is the branch we want to send there. So here we're asking Git locally to send everything I've committed, so only the code that I've committed, anything that's loose, right, that I have not done a git add, git commit for, will not go to Heroku. So Heroku also works off of commits. And it's asking me to push that code to Heroku. So the first time I do this, you'll notice, that kind of looks like when we first make our new Rails app where we type bundle. Heroku has received my code and is now installing all the gems that it needs. Right, installing Nokogiri and Puma and Rails and Active Record and all that. This is taking longer than we've normally seen for pushing code, because when we push our code to GitHub, all it's doing is remembering it. Now, Heroku is waking up and it's making a server for us. It's actually making a database for us, a Postgres database, right? Probably the reason why we choose to teach a Postgres, right? We can see things about geocoder coming up, right? Now, it is figuring out that we have Ruby applications. It has compressed our application down to 36 megabytes, right? And it says, hey, we are done. It has released version 6 of the app to this URL. We can put this URL into our browser, or we can type Heroku open. The command Heroku open will try to open our application in the browser. But it's telling me, hey, you have an application error. The app tried to start, but there's an application error. And it's saying, you can check the logs on the server with the command Heroku logs -- tail. So I deployed my application to production. It tried to access it. I should see a map, right, of taco trucks. I don't see that. Let's try Heroku logs -- tail. Let's see, what does it say? It says that it crashed. Here's those like funny callbacks tracks we have. And what we're going to find, if we scroll up a little bit more, actually let's clear the screen and reload our page and see if we can get the full error. Oh, great, it's not telling me. Well, I happen to know what the error is in this case. The error that we have is that we haven't run our database migration yet. So we have sent our app to Heroku, and Heroku has created a database for us, but the database is empty. So we need to tell Heroku, hey, please load my database schema into that new database you created for me. And we know that locally, we do that with Rails db schema load. Right? Yesterday when we were talking about how do we clear our database and reload our tables, it's db schema load. Well, I want to do that on Heroku. I want to do the same command, but I'm going to prefix it with Heroku run Rails db schema load. So any Rails command I can do locally, I can prefix with heroku run, and it will do the same command, but in production. Oops, actually, sorry. I don't mean to do db schema load. I mean to do Rails db migrate. I mean to run Rails db migrate. So this is going to run the migrations that are waiting on Heroku. Oh, and it's still failing. Why is this failing? Aha, I know why it's failing. So this particular app also has a React app application in it, and I think we need to do the steps now. Now we're at the point where we can do the steps that we meant to do, I said don't do, when we were first adding our React application. So now we do need to do this step 3 in our React application. Right. This configures how to build the React part of our application in production. Right, so this is executing all the commands in step 3. And now we're finally ready down here to add this step 8, which I've added, right? So create a Heroku app if needed. We just did that. Do at least one deploy to Heroku. We did that. Now we can add this Heroku command. This teaches Heroku that we also have Node.js for handling our JavaScript, our React app. I think this is what we need. So now it says we can run git push Heroku master to create a new release using the build pack. But if I do that, it says everything is up to date. Right? There are no new commits to send to Heroku, so there's no work to do. If we ever need to push code to Heroku and have it rebuild our application, we have to generate an empty commit. So there's no changes to make, but we can make an empty commit. Now Git and Heroku say, okay, cool, there's something to push. Now when I push to Heroku, right, now it's detecting my JavaScript application as well. So we have to create our Heroku app, push to Heroku at least once, add the build pack here from steps 3 and steps 8, make one empty commit and push. This is a little bit more complicated, so we have a React app and a Rails application in one project. And that's not something that Heroku supports out of the box, but we're teaching it that we want it to build our React app. So right now it's doing the npm run build, if you remember all the way back from like week 4, when we first started building things. Now it's doing that in our Heroku production environment. And we wait. Now that we have our React app building well, I think we'll be able to do our database migrations. So you can tell this kind of takes a while. This is probably not the kind of thing you're going to do like every time you get a little bit of work done. Maybe you end up doing this once a day, right? Towards the end of the day, right? Or you do it in the morning to push the work you did yesterday. But you're probably not going to do a push to Heroku every time you push to GitHub. So my normal workflow is I work and I check things locally. I make a bunch of commits, right? It's been a while, an hour or so. Let me push that to GitHub. Keep doing work. I wonder if this is still working in production. Maybe once a day as I'm working, I'll push to Heroku just to check. That's probably the flow you'll be in once you get your app up and working in Heroku.
Can I see the URL for the React app thing again? I need to.
Oh, it's in the handbook. Resources, additional Rails resources, add a React app.
Okay, thank you.
So now, let's try Heroku run Rails DB migrate. There we go. And here are the migrations on production. You see they're a little more verbose because it's showing us all of the create table statements. Right? Normally in development mode, you don't see all of this create tables, etc. But in production, it's going to show you all the details. Now if I come back to my app, here's my app. It's asking if SDG Taco Tuesday wants to know my location. Yes. Did we create any seed files? Did we create a lib tasks sample data? Cool. So here's my sample data. Right? And we said yesterday the way that I run my sample data locally is Rails sample data create. Right? If I want to do this in production, Heroku run Rails sample data create. So in your project, any Rails command you run, including Rails console, you can do Heroku run Rails console. The only one we won't do is Rails server, right? Because it's running the server for us. So if I do this, it's going to run my sample data create, but in my production environment. Heroku run Rails sample data create. There it is. It's inserting some companies, it's inserting some locations, and it's done. Now, when I reload this, now I have a couple taco companies in here. Now I'm at the point where I can flow through writing more code, testing it locally, making sure it works, pushing to production. Right? So you probably want to be in the habit now at least once a day, once you have your Heroku application up and going, pushing to production once a day just to make sure everything that was working locally was still working in production. Right? What you'll find is the first time you come to this app, right, it'll be a little slow, it'll take time to spin up, but every time you push new code to Heroku, it will launch your application, or just going to that URL and reloading the page will fire it up. Right? For those of you who are going to do image uploading, I will do a separate lecture with just you on how to sign up for the account for Active Storage and how to set up that, because you'll need like a secret key for your account where you're going to store your images. And I'll show you how to sign up for that and how to add that to your application, because we do that a little differently. But at this point, we're really ready to any of the work that we do, add and commit it to our Git project, and now push it to GitHub frequently, push it to Heroku at least once a day, and we should be off and running. Right? The nice thing about Heroku is as we keep building our application, maybe eventually we want our application to be able to send email. Heroku has plugins to connect to email servers. Let's say we want to have background jobs, right? Maybe it turns out that, Chris, for your application, the process of comparing somebody to all the rest of the people in the database turns out to be a really long process. And you don't want that to happen while the user is waiting in their browser. You want that to happen in the background and show them a little spinner. Hey, I'm figuring out who all your connections are. And maybe that takes 45 seconds. Heroku has a background job queue where you can say this code doesn't run while the user's waiting, it runs in the background. So a lot of things that we tend to build into our applications, what's nice about something like Heroku, a platform as a service, is they're in the business of offering you all those features, of course, for a little bit of money, right? Pretty much everything has a free tier for you to try, right? This database, for instance, I think we're allowed to have 10 megabytes of data or 100 megabytes of data in it or something, not that much. But certainly enough for like a test app, certainly enough for a small app, totally enough for all of your capstone projects, right? But as soon as your app launches and gets popular, and Heroku's sending you a warning like, hey, your database is getting full, you either need to go and delete data or pay us $5 a month to have an outrageous amount of database storage, right? So it's really nice for standing up small applications and trying them. Most of the small projects that I've worked on have started out in Heroku, even through development and sometimes through early launch, and sometimes forever, right? There's still Heroku apps that businesses are running on. They just pay them a little bit more, right? As their app gets bigger and more popular and they need faster service, they can add more Heroku servers. Right now, we're just running on one little server, what Heroku calls a dyno, right? It's one little machine running our app. Right? If all of a sudden our Taco Tuesday app became really popular and it got slow, we would ask Heroku to add a second dyno. Now, 2 machines are splitting that traffic. And they got even more popular, we would add 3, 4, 5. They also have services that will dynamically scale that. Right? So for some reason, someone posts to Reddit in the middle of the night, like, hey, there's this awesome brew app, right? And everyone hits your brew application. Heroku will add more servers as it sees traffic coming, and as it sees traffic go away, it will remove those servers. You're only paying for those spikes, right? Companies that have, low business and they do like a once a year sale, right? And everyone comes and hits their site, right? You only want to pay for those servers during that time. They will automatically scale. So these kinds of services are really neat because it takes all of that off of us, the developer. We don't have to worry about maintaining the database, right? Maintaining the background queues, making sure the servers are running. We just sign up for those various services and we push our code to Heroku and it runs. The downside is we don't have control over all of those things, right? Some teams want very specific controls. They want to optimize certain ways. These kinds of services aren't great for that. What tends to happen is people leave something like Heroku and go straight to AWS themselves and do the work themselves. But in the early times, right, I sign up for a Heroku app, I say Heroku create, I do a couple commands to push and configure my application, and I'm off, right? My site's live. I can keep working and push to Heroku, and everything is good. And the only other thing I might do if this were a real application is come up with a real domain name instead of Heroku app. I think that's pretty nice, pretty straightforward. And it gets us into this good flow of making sure that our app works in production as we go. So if you want to try this on your capstone project, let me know. It's another thing I will sit with you and help you with in case you run into any troubles. But probably at least, if you're working on your to-do list, by like Tuesday of next week, make sure you have your app on Heroku somewhere where we can see it. Right? And then from that day forward, at least once a day, be pushing your code to Heroku and checking it there. Right? This is not a leave it till the day before code freeze to do. Right? We don't make sure there are no issues. There usually aren't, but today, early next week should be let me at least get one thing up and running on Heroku. Right? Any questions, concerns? How many people think they're gonna go through the process of actually paying for a custom domain for their app?
Already did.
Did you? Cool. All right, when you're ready, come see me and I'll show you where in Heroku to go plug that in. And they have really good instructions for how to do that. Don't feel like you have to, but if you want to, you can. No one's gonna look at it, askew if you have something.herokuapp.com. But if you want a a custom domain, that's also cool. No questions? Cool. All right, so like I said, I'll be around this morning, rest of the day. Let's work on capstone and homework. Don't spend any time being stuck on stuff. Come ask lots of questions.